Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Tuesday, 27th of March, 2018. And it's a cold, wet and miserable morning. And for those of you who are watching overseas, of course, that's how you probably perceive the UK always to be. But actually, it's actually quite a rarity. Actually, I have more decent mornings at this time than I do this type of morning. But here we go. It's early spring. Just on the cusp of heading into April, so not really too surprising, is it? Anyway, good day yesterday. Some great actions, of course, truck surfing on the M6, and again, 2 lady protectors, and lock-on down at Great Yarmouth. And as more and more people really start to become aware of what's occurring here, then obviously the initiatives taken by an increasing number of local people are going to be ramped up. And there is increasing evidence that this is a very successful tactic. And one has to say that the Tory government, 8 years now of Tory government, has actually politicised the nation probably more than anything since Margaret Thatcher. I guess that people were politicised briefly in 2003 when there was a token objection, a few million people, to Tony Blair's push to take the country to war with Iraq, which of course we now know was based on a lie. And of course we're seeing that repeated again, but that's not the topic of today's live stream. But as more and more people start to realise that their politicians don't listen to them, not that they ever have, but it's a bit of a tough realisation. And some people, of course, are waking up for the first time to this obscenity that they elect their politicians believing that their politicians are going to represent their interests. And of course, now it's becoming increasingly apparent that actually nothing could be further from the truth. They are, of course, representing the interests of the corporatists who effectively fund them. So ask yourself the question, the Tory party is benefiting from significant chunks of change from the Russian emigre community. So, hey, we'll leave that for another day, yeah? But yesterday, tremendous success in Sheffield, as it was announced by Sheffield County Council that there will be a pause in the tree felling campaign. Now, this is a tremendous result, and Sheffield County Council have actually acknowledged in this morning's edition of the Yorkshire Post that Sheffield Council blames increasingly dangerous protesters as the partial tree felling halt is called. Now, that's could be interpreted as it's just a partial halt to the tree felling, or a halt to the partial tree felling. Well, whichever, we'll see how that manifests. But of course, the goal was to remove something in the region of about 17,500 trees from Sheffield over the next 2 to 3 years or so. And of course, as this campaign had become increasingly aggressive and people realised that their beautiful tree-lined streets, which is being decimated, then obviously they took action. And I think that the halt probably has more to do, once again, with the outrageous policing. And the videos of, an elderly gentleman in a bicycle helmet being brutalised by South Yorkshire police, and, room temperature IQ PC actually arresting a lady for blowing a toy trumpet, the noise level of which was considerably less than that of the chainsaws being used by those who were cutting down the trees. So, once again, the citizen media, if you like, social media, has benefited has contributed very significantly to bringing about this halt, because I noticed that actually in some of the national papers yesterday, both of those cases were reported. Now, Monday week ago, I first introduced the suggestion that this was directly related to 5G. Now, I've suspected this for some time, but an article appeared in The Sun on Sunday, this is Sunday week ago, which actually gave me the opportunity to create the hook. Because, you know, the vast majority of people won't believe anything unless it appears in the media or on the BBC. Well, actually not the vast majority, but, you know, a chunk of the community. Well, The Sun ran the article, gave me the opportunity to introduce this. And fortunately, more and more people are starting now to do their own research. And, you know, already I've had the suggestion that this is, you know, just a tinfoil hat fantasy. Well, you know, the government and the telecoms companies, thank you for your dismissive ignorance, because they absolutely rely on people not doing their own research. And of course, there has to be some motivation. And, you know, this was really the case 5 years ago when I was doing the Fractured Future tour around the country. And the industry and the government and others were trying to say, oh, you know, don't worry, this is just conspiracy. There's no risk, there's no danger. Well, you know, fortunately, an increasing percentage of the population have done their research and have realised that, believe it or not, their government and the industry are lying. And, you know, the evidence is self-evident when you take a look. And it's the same with 5G. And, you know, all we can ask is that people do their research. Now, there's a pause. This is a superb opportunity for people to do the research and spread the word and ask the questions, because it's all out there when you look. And so let me just take a look here. I want to refer to, you know, the comments from some of the MPs and a local councillor. Well, 3 MPs have been pushing for a halt or for a cessation of the arboricide, the destruction of the trees in Sheffield. And these are the 3 Labour MPs, Louise Haigh, Paul Bloomfield and Jared O'Mara. Although I thought Jared O'Mara was suspended from the Labour Party at the moment. But anyway, nonetheless, the 3 of them have been calling for a halt. But here's the interesting comment made by Councillor Brian Lodge, who's a cabinet member for the environment in Sheffield, on the city council, and he said on Friday last week that the tree felling contract was delivering what the people of Sheffield want. Now, this is classic common purpose newspeak, and what he's basically inferring, of course, and he's trying to allude to the fact that the people actually want the trees to be felled. Well, of course they don't. So what is he talking about when he says that the contract is delivering what the people of Sheffield want? Well, what he's actually alluding to is the opportunity to download your Facebook profile a few nanoseconds faster than you can right now, or to download a movie without it keep pausing to upload. So you know, there's no question. If you ask people a loaded question, you know, would you like to have a much faster and more extensive coverage of your mobile phone network, then most people unhesitatingly are going to say, well, of course. But if you don't tell them what the implications of that are, then, you know, they're simply just going to continue in their ignorance. So, let me today just set you off on the path of discovery. And, you know, once again, we're in a very similar situation to that which we were with fracking 5 years ago, in that the number of academic papers is quite few. But nonetheless, when you look at what the industry and academia have put out, and then you look at what's occurring, then, you know, you have to draw some correlation. And of course, if you don't, that's exactly what the government and the industry want. They don't want you to do anything more than think one-dimensionally. But let me draw your attention to a paper that was produced by the University of Surrey, which is based in Guildford, and their Institute for Communication Systems, not least what they call the 5G Innovation Centre. So, the title of the paper is Meeting the Challenge of Universal Coverage, Reach and Reliability in the Coming 5G Era. Now, of course, 5G is a lot more than actually just enabling people to download their Facebook page a bit quicker or watch movies without it constantly pausing to cache. It's about the Internet of Things. It's literally about a digital control network. And if you haven't come across the phrase Internet of Things, or the digital control network, of which smart meters, smart motorways, smart TVs, smart fridges, anything that has the word smart in front of it isn't smart for either you or me. It's smart for the corporations and their opportunity to maximize the marketing opportunities from the data that they collect. And of course, it's massive data mining. And we've only seen the tip of the iceberg with the recent revelations about Cambridge Analytica. And I would draw people's attention to the outstanding presentation by Dr. Graham Downing at AV8 last year, where he talks about Cambridge Analytica and its data mining and its fake news propaganda role in the first couple of minutes of his presentation. And you can find his presentation on the Alternative View YouTube channel. So, people are starting to become increasingly aware about the pernicious agenda of artificial intelligence and how it is going to be used to manipulate even more the lives of the masses. So 5G is a massive part of this, a really big part of this. So who contributed to this paper? Well, amongst the co-authors are Michael Fitch of British Telecom, David Owens of Telefonica, known to people in the UK as O2, Simon Saunders of Real Wireless, and Andy Sutton of EE. And I'm going to put a link to this paper under this this morning's live stream. But let me just draw your attention to section 3.1, which is headed Mast Height at Tree Level as a Limiting Factor on Reach and Reliability. And I'm just going to give you a taste, the first paragraph or so. New ways for local planning authorities to work with mobile network operators to benefit from a leap forward in coverage. In the past, the priority for planning authorities has been to reduce mobile phone mast heights so that masts are visually screened by buildings and or trees, with trees being the highest and most likely obstruction. However, this, i.e. trees, also screens the radio frequency signals and has defeated the objective of reliable coverage. It goes on, to avoid signal loss, it is necessary for the tree height to be at least 3 meters lower than base station height. And the report then looks at the full national damage to mobile reach and reliability due to trees. So listen, the focus here is on the damage to signal loss caused by trees. And then it makes the observation that if mast height, if the transmitter height is just 10 meters, then there is a 30% loss of radio frequency signal. Now, when you get the mast height to 15 meters, that's reduced to 10%. And when you get the mast height up to 25 meters, then it's reduced to 1%. But that's on existing coverage. So with 5G, which works more like Wi-Fi, it's a much higher frequency. It needs line of sight and it needs zero obstruction. So you've got a choice here. The choice, of course, is to have a network of some 500,000 masts around the country at an average height of 80 feet. Now, each one of those would have to go through the appropriate planning permission. So clearly, the likelihood of that happening is slim to none, because regardless of the pressure put on by the government and the telecoms companies, then planning authorities are going to resist a network, every few hundred meters of phone masts that are some 75, 80 meters tall. I mean, it's just a non-starter. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to remove the obstructions so that you can put the 5G transmitters on the tops of lampposts, on the tops of telegraph poles, on the tops of road signs. So, and then clear the path between the traction problem on YouTube. There we go, let's try that again. The only way in which they can achieve that is to absolutely obliterate the tree population, particularly in towns and cities around the UK. And like I've said, you're never going to get the establishment to admit that it knows the facts. Look at the lies, the deceit, the obfuscation that is pumped out regarding unconventional gas exploitation. Kevin Hollinrake, the MP, who I have colloquially nicknamed Kevin Hollins Snake due to his treachery of the constituents in North Yorkshire, the guy knows the evidence, and yet look at the constant misspeaking that he puts out, because he's pushing an agenda. And it's going to be exactly the same with the telecoms companies. They will embrace academia, and the MPs, embrace is a term I'm using for effectively bribe, to keep them on message. What we've seen in Sheffield is the power of community action. What we're seeing around the country with the continuing delays in the fracking agenda is the power of community. And this is ultimately going to be what is necessary regardless of who's in political office. The important thing is that communities start to take much more of an interest in what their politicians, who in many cases are bought and paid for by the corporations, and what agenda they're pushing. And if we don't, then they are extremely grateful for our acquiescence, because then they can simply reap the benefits of their increased bank accounts without having to worry or have any sleepless nights, because they've been found out by their constituents. So, right now, it's a very, very interesting time. This government has potentially, if it can keep bribing the DUP to support its increasingly outrageous policies, but it potentially has 4 more years in office. So you can either sit back and watch this Tory government continue its agenda to destroy the ecology and to destroy the health of the people. And the reason being is so that the corporations and those who invest in those corporations can obviously enhance their bank accounts and ship large chunks of the nation's wealth offshore. So, as is always the case, the choice is up to us. But please, before you hit the keyboard and accuse anyone who makes the link between 5G and tree felling, before you start to use the old, tired adage of just a conspiracy theory, which is proof that you haven't done your research. It's proof that you cannot articulate any counter hypothesis because you haven't done the research. The information is there, it's freely available. Just start by punching into your search engine 5G and problems with trees, or just 5G and trees, and see what comes up, and join the dots for yourself. There's a pause in Sheffield. Now, is Councillor Brian, or whatever his name is he going to win the day? Because the people of Sheffield would much prefer to have a faster mobile phone network than they would to live in a city that has beautiful tree-lined avenues. So thanks for joining me this morning, and whatever it is that you are doing in terms of contributing to challenging the Tory government's corporatist agenda, then keep doing what you're doing, keep spreading the word, and ultimately community action will win the day. Thanks for joining me, and I will catch you tomorrow at 8:30. You have a great day.